Hey, welcome to the Extra Podcast. My name's Daniel. I'm joined around the table with Jeff Bucknam.
Hi.
And a long returning guest. Name that person.
Hello.
It's Krusty.
How you guys doing?
I don't know how long I can do that for.
We're here with Jonathan Giesbrecht. You might remember Jonathan Giesbrecht. He's been a guest on the show before, on the program. We brought him on.
Pastor Jonathan Giesbrecht. He's the worship pastor here at Northview Community Church. Mm-hmm. The red-headed guy who likes to bounce around. Yeah. and play the same songs every week.
Every week.
Every single week. Why do you play the same songs every week? Do you just like it, or?
Why do I play the same songs every week? Well, I don't. But for those who feel I do the same songs often. Well, Jeff, this is the problem. You have the disadvantage because you have to hear the same service 4 times in a row. Yeah. So every time you hear one service, you've actually heard that song 4 times. So if I've done it like 2 or 3 times over a course of 3 months, it's like 8 to 12 times you've heard it.
Probably true.
But for those who do feel like I do the same songs often, we do cycle through a number of songs. We do the same songs often for the sake of familiarity. For some people who don't know Christian songs very much, if I introduced a new song every week and always did new songs, it's hard to sing along to new songs. So familiarity is helpful. Also,
it's hard to sing along to some of the old songs, Jonathan.
This is true.
Just kidding.
No, but this is actually true. Actually, it's interesting. If you look at some of the really old hymns that everyone just belts, as a worship leader, I get the privilege during these old hymns to hear the congregation singing, and it's like a wall of sound. But if you're new to church, those hymns, the melodies and the words are really complicated. Yeah. Like they are not something you pick up over one service. Like it is a lifetime of learning these songs that has resulted in people being able to sing them the way they are. Musically, they're very complicated for the most part.
Yeah, I'm always surprised when I hear, if someone introduces a new hymn, and I'm like, I've never heard this before.
It's so hard.
But then, like, everyone else is singing it.
Yeah,
super crazy.
Yeah, and if you haven't heard it before, like, try to follow along. It's like, I'm sorry, where does that melody? I need the bouncing ball showing me going up and down and stuff, because it's...
Like on the Wii, when you... Rock Band.
Rock Band.
Did you ever play that game?
I have played Rock Band.
Yeah, do you play Rock Band, Jeff?
I have played Rock Band, yes. I also have played Guitar Hero.
Are you an expert?
Nope, I'm not good at it at all.
Yeah.
Do you game? Do you video game?
I am a video game. I enjoy it, and I wouldn't call myself a gamer, but I enjoy a good video game. Usually the sports games are some of my favorite ones. I created a character in the NBA 2K series about 4 years ago, me and my son did, who was the single best basketball player in the history of basketball.
Walk us through his. I mean, how tall is he?
He dominated. We had him at 6'5".
Oh, okay. Not a big guy.
No, 6'5", a 6'5" point guard, who over time we had played so much that we had developed his skills to the point where he was unstoppable. Like unstoppable. I think he was averaging close to 60 points a game and about 20 rebounds a game.
So almost like Steph Curry. Almost as good as Steph Curry.
He'd only been in the league like, I don't know, 4 years or something like that. And he won the title every year. He's the greatest player ever. So like whenever we watch the basketball now and somebody said, oh, isn't Steph Curry the best ever? We say no. And then we say the name of our guy.
What was the name of your guy?
Well, Frank McInnes is the name they gave him. Oh. So he is Frank McInnes.
Wait, you got a stock name for your character?
Well, that's right. Why are we going to name something else?
You
Frank
name
McInnes
him like
was the best ever. He was
Billy Bob McGee or something
Frank
like that.
Our Frank McInnes, because he played. I think we had him playing for the Sacramento Kings.
Oh.
And we won the title with him. Oh, and then we traded to like the 76ers. We just decided we were going to get traded to the worst teams and see if anybody could stop us. Nope.
No, they couldn't. I did that once in FIFA. I made my character, and I tried to do Danny Markin, but I figured out if I changed it to Danny Martin, the commentators would say, Balta Martin! And they would, I thought it was way cooler. So
that's exactly my problem. I make my character Giesbrecht, and it's like, try to find a Giesbrecht on those games. It's like the closest you get is like...
I've never tried to find a Giesbrecht on those games, Jonathan.
There you go. Well, that's good. That's great.
Was Danny Martin one of the best players to ever play the game?
Oh, he was phenomenal. At age 16, he scored 3 goals in his first 7 minutes on the pitch for Aston Villa. And then I get an email from the coach saying, you're not performing at the level that we would have hoped. So they sent me down to the lower leagues. I'm leading the team in scoring in their first match, and they sent me down to Swindon Town
Good
United.
Good old Swindon Town United.
And then the next year, we won the title. Then I went to play for PSG. Anyways, this is all very complicated and boring. And gentlemen, the first topic I want to talk about is really something fascinating. You know, people, they arrive at church on a Sunday morning. They might grab their coffee. They might sit in the lobby. First thing they see is Jonathan Giesbrecht on stage. He's playing the same songs over and over again. Then maybe Ron goes up on stage, does his thing, or Imran. Then Jeff comes walking out, does his preach. And you guys will do this over and over. But what the people want to know is, what is your Sunday morning routine? Like, do you have a routine that you have to be at the church at a certain time, and you have a certain juice that you drink for your voice, Jonathan? Or Jeff, do you have a favorite snack that you like to eat before you go on stage? Let us know what a morning in the life of Jonathan Giesbrecht. Jonathan, you go first.
Well, my morning usually starts around 5:30. I'm woken up by my alarm clock, and her name is Maisie, and she's 6 months old. Like, consistently around 5:30. I'll try to get her back down, and when I can't, my son will wake me up, and then my day starts. I don't really do too much vocal warm-ups, but I'll have a good cup of coffee, maybe a little bit to eat. It's around 6:30 or 7.
I thought coffee was bad for one's voice.
It is. So this is the principle with coffee and caffeine. Caffeine dehydrates you, and that's bad for your voice. However, water hydrates you. So the principle that I follow, and it's actually proved helpful, is for every cup of coffee you drink, you must drink 2 cups of water to replenish what you've lost and then further hydrate what you need.
So, or you could just drink like 1 cup of water and no coffee.
Yes.
And what time's that at? What time are you drinking this?
6:30 in the morning or so. That would work, having no coffee, if you can function on no coffee, which I cannot.
So you're addicted to a drug.
So I am addicted to a drug. Yes.
Wow.
Yep. So this has been great. Confession time with Jeff and Dan.
Okay, so you drink your coffee, then what?
Well, then I'll usually watch Paw Patrol or Daniel Tiger with my son. That's exciting. We learn valuable life lessons together. And I'm usually at the church by around 7:30-ish, making sure that everything's good, making sure that no one got to the stage the day before and ransacked it.
The reason for that, though, is that because the night before you actually played the songs.
I did.
So it's not,
Yeah.
you don't have to get there super early, because so some people, like, if work at a church, they're there quite early.
Yeah, and in our other venues, like Todd and Nate and the other alternates, they'll be there probably around that time practicing. So usually I come around 7:30 to make sure that everything's still set up. But then I'll also go listen to them and support them if I can in any way. Yeah, and then after that we get together. We'll all get together as teams, and we'll pray together right around 8:00 ish, and we'll pray for a good chunk of time before the service starts, and then we strum our chords and away we go. That's my morning.
3 times every Sunday morning, and you go home afterwards, and what do?
I sit on my couch and look at football like a zombie. Yeah. Sunday afternoon is a crash time for me.
Yeah.
Or I'll try to be social as much as I can if we have people over. Or we're
Do you usually have people over on Sundays?
Sometimes we'll actually go to my parents' place and
Oh, yeah.
hang out with family. Let Eli and Maisie see their uncles and aunt and grandparents and stuff.
Good.
So, just good times.
Nice. Jeff, what about you, man?
So I used to get up quite early on Sundays, and then
What time was that at?
like 6 for me, about 6 early, and then I would get myself sorted. I used to ride my bike to the church on Sundays. I still do from time to time. And if that happens, I have to get up at about 6, and I leave and get here about, I don't know, 7:30, something like that. I don't know. It's been different lately. I'll get to the church a little bit later now, because I'm spending a lot more time at home with my laptop, looking over some things and, praying and all that for Sunday morning, and then I'll get to the church either by car or bike and spend a little bit of time here. But I'm usually getting to the church nowadays about 8, just because I have to be there for quite a long time. I usually leave around 2. So yeah, I'm there. I have a very strict schedule though once things start. So I show up like Jonathan. I have to drink a little bit so I don't drink coffee. So I usually actually have a Coke Zero.
You do.
Yeah,
it's
isn't that
weird.
crazy?
It's super weird.
Because I do need to wake up a little bit, and so like you, I don't really need it, but I tend to use it.
That's what most addicts say.
8:30 service. I don't need it.
It's
No.
your
I don't
drug.
need it.
Coke Zero is
It
your
doesn't
drug.
Fine
own
without
me.
It's your drug, Jeff.
And then between the services, I actually I will have to eat certain things. Like I have to eat nuts between the first service and second.
It's the protein,
on Sunday.
right?
And then they make me a sandwich, God bless them, between the next two services. And then after the service, after it's over, I usually spend some time between services. Oftentimes, I'll either spend a little bit. If I'm really tired, I'll go and sit down for a little bit upstairs in the office, or sit down in the area behind the stage where we sit. Or if I have a bit more energy that day, I'll go and roam around and see the different venues and stuff.
At the
And
end
then
of
I go home, and I always have. Lately, I've been having a nap, but I have a new bed. We have a new bed, and the bed is like, just if you sit on it, it kills you. So I
In a
sit
good way or a
oh yeah,
bad way?
like it just slays you. Like you
In a good
sit,
way?
Yes, you
Okay.
lay down on this bed.
I was like,
No,
that
you
sounds
just
awful.
you lay
Return
down and
it.
you're out. You're just out. And so it's been phenomenal. In the last couple of weeks, I've been sleeping for about 2.5, 3 hours. It's been terrible. I don't know why.
Well,
It's all the
on a
energy.
Sunday morning, after 3 services, you have spoken publicly for approximately 2 hours,
Yeah,
not including the Saturday night before.
yeah.
I'd probably nap for about 2 hours
No,
after that too.
It's a pretty busy 24 hours. There's no question about that for both of us. But everybody's got their unique challenges in their job, or the things that they do that are, interesting. Art, what I do is not that interesting. But I do have to regulate my energy levels, though. I found
for sure.
So this weekend I was spending more time mingling and talking to people earlier on, instead of finding a quiet place and being alone and quiet for a bit. So if like the 11:30 service toward the end, I was really feeling it. I was feeling like, oh my goodness, the tank is empty.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a challenge. You know that too, right?
Yeah,
When
and a
you're-
lot of times I feel bad between services because I'd like to be more social
Totally.
and be around, and I just feel like it's a disservice to our last service if we come in there just zonked. And it is hard. It's hard to, you have to find that balance. You want to be present and be around and be accessible if people want to talk and stuff like that. And I want
know
to talk too. So
I know some guys who do 5. That's,
Yeah, that's
the most I've
insane.
ever heard. I do 4 on a weekend, but I've heard of guys do 5 services on a weekend, and I don't actually know how they do that.
Yeah.
I've done Christmas Eve. The most I've ever done in a
Christmas
day
Eve. Yeah.
is
Fine.
I've done 6 on
6?
Christmas Eve. Yeah.
But those are like 15
But they're only
minutes.
15 minutes
right?
each,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, but you're there all day, so
Oh,
you're
yeah.
more or
Yeah.
less you're on. You have to be on all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one of them that you don't even know you're doing. I can't remember doing.
Yeah.
You're kind of like, it's funny.
Do you ever get it when either you two are so in the mode and so in the zone that like you could be singing or preaching, you're just thinking about something completely different?
Well, you have to be. That's dangerous actually, because if you get so used to saying what you're saying, it is the wandering of your mind that freaks you out, because your mind does come back, and then you're realizing, where am I?
Yeah,
what did I just do?
totally. Yeah.
Am I in the right spot? I don't even. It's like driving, and
Yeah.
some people look at their phone while they're driving, and then that fear that comes on you, like, I shouldn't be looking at the phone while that's ridiculous. Put the phone down. But then there's this, like, you look up and you're like, oh, I was kind of, or if you late at night when you're driving and you kind of,
And you
are
almost like fading. Yeah,
almost
yeah,
fading.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
like, oh, what happened there?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
that kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Except you're doing it in front of thousands
in front of
people.
1,000 people. So you're looking ahead and you're like, I have no idea what song am I in right now?
Oh no. Is this the right chord?
Where am I?
So you have to be careful.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
So if
Well, yeah.
people are in the congregation, they notice you guys have a blank face, you might be somewhere else.
Well, most people don't notice it. Most people would never
I hope
notice,
not
because you
anyway.
yourself don't notice it half the time, and so and then you come to. Or there are times where, I don't know about you, Jonathan, but like the next thing I'm supposed to be doing, I've done it several times, but I just can't remember what the next thing is, because I've been having this second conversation in my mind about the weather outside, or about, oh, that's so-and-so and they're here at church today. Isn't that cool? Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you notice everything. This is funny too. When people sit in a large congregation, people oftentimes treat it like they're in a movie or whatever, where they can get up and they'll walk out or whatever. I see everybody, whatever you're doing. I usually can see it. You think that you're being like all private-y and stuff.
Especially if it's a little bit abnormal. Like if everyone's standing there singing and you're looking down, like your head is down, everyone else is up. I can see that. And it looks funny.
And you're thinking in your mind, why are you looking down?
Yeah. You're like, are you on your phone? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Why do you do this?
Look, there was a guy who used to sit. He's not around anymore, but he used to sit right on the aisle in the worship services, and he just opened his mouth and put his head back
and fall asleep.
Yeah, right. The moment you stood up there, I was like, you're not even giving me a chance, right? You just sort of like, and it's so like it's difficult because the whole time, if he ever was looking at you, you'd be like, this is the best sermon I've ever preached ever, because you're here with me. But But people sometimes are thinking when they do that, well, I'm obviously totally anonymous sitting here
totally
doing this. And yet the speaker knows exactly what's going on. And they're trying to avoid looking at you, or you as the worship leader trying to avoid looking at you because you're killing me, man.
Yeah. The one thing that gets me the most is when people start talking to each other. And it's totally fine. It's nothing wrong with talking to each other. But like automatically I go to, what are they saying? Oh, did they not like, oh shoot, did I make a big mistake?
Yeah.
And then I started like running through the gauntlet of everything they could possibly saying when it could just be like, I really like this song. Yeah. Or I don't know, whatever.
You're thinking,
I'm thinking worst case.
Did I play the same song twice?
Did I forget to put my pants on today? Like all of them.
Oh man.
Best ever.
Now, do you guys ever get it where something's like desperately making you laugh and you have to hold it together when you're on stage? Does that ever happen?
Yes, there have been times where that's I mean,
do you acknowledge it, or do you?
Yeah,
just
one of the funny things to do with pastors is to get together and hear their stories. Which I mean, on our podcast before we shared a few little stories here and there, but like some of them are hysterical because people don't think that you're looking at them. They honestly they sometimes act like they're in their car, right? Where they think that there's nobody around, so they're picking their nose or whatever, and they oftentimes they aren't completely aware of the language, their body language.
Yeah. It's like they're sitting in front of a TV or something like that. Yeah. And they don't realize that you can see them.
Right. And sometimes the cross the armed furrow brow, it's like sending a message that you don't intend to send. You're just being comfortable, right?
Yeah.
But
you're like really thinking critically about what they're saying.
The person speaking is like, okay, are you not understanding me, or are you just livid with what I just said? Which of course, I don't know, maybe you are livid with what I just said. Okay. And then in the speaker or the worship leader's mind, you're kind of like, well,
what did I say again?
Maybe I'm going to double down on this one, right? Like, you have to decide whether you're going to care or not. So actually, one of the things I pray for quite a lot is the spirit of self-forgetfulness before I go up and preach. Is that the Lord would grant me the ability to not be aware of my own, just to be able to communicate and not be thinking all the time about whether or not I'm looking at people the right way or, doing the teleprompter kind of approach.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I remember, just a quick story related to this. Like when I was helping out with the high school worship band, Jonathan, way back in the day, I was in grade 12. We had one of the worship interns. He was really sick, but he showed up and he was going to sing, and we were singing "Come Ye Sinners." And it gets to the point, you will never come at all. And he went, oh, and just died. And I remember the whole time, I'm losing my mind. And I'm trying to play these chords. And like, I'm closing my eyes. and I'm like, I have this big smile on my face. So I'm trying to make it look like I'm just loving worship with God and having this, like I'm really just joyful. But I'm just trying to hold together. It is painful.
Yeah.
Whew.
It's good times.
That's really good times.
There's often times where you'll have like, my voice cracks quite often over the course of 4 services. And every time I do, there's a person on my team who I know heard it and I know is staring at the back of my head with a big grin. And that's where I'm kind of like, look away. I can feel you behind me. Look away.
Burn on the back of the head.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
And Anyway, I'm predisposed to chuckling. So sometimes
Sometimes you chuckle.
Sometimes I chuckle.
Sometimes you chuckle.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I'm going to take this a little bit of a different, I guess that was a little bit of fun. This is going to be kind of sad. We all know about the massacre in Las Vegas from the weekend. At the concert, a guy was up in a hotel and smashed out his window and just began to fire with automatic weapons upon the entire crowd, the concert crowd. 59 plus dead, 500 injured. The guy had 18 guns up there. I read today that he was like a millionaire. Like he made tons of money gambling in Vegas. And
he was also associated with he had a job for years that was affiliated with the defense industry in the States. So he had a lot of access to weaponry but no prior indications that he was the kind of guy that would do this sort of thing. And I mean, there's all sorts of theological implications here, right? Yeah. I mean, it's interesting hearing what people are saying about this, right? That the president said this is pure evil, which of course is true. That's right. What's interesting to me about it is that I think here's a guy that nobody could see it coming from, and you would not have guessed apparently that there were any indicators that this sort of thing is, which basically shows that inside the heart of a lot of all of us is this ability to hate for whatever reason, or decide that you were going to do some wicked act. And I don't know what drove this man to what he's doing. Nobody does at this point. He didn't leave a message, or at least that we know of, or anything like that, giving any indication of his motive. But it does show you, it is a kind of illustration of the depth of depravity in the human heart, just in normal human people, right? Mm-hmm. Right? Because we'll end up doing is saying, well, this guy's just like Hitler or Pol Pot or whatever. He's a different kind of human being.
He's a psychopath, unlike the rest of us.
When the truth is, actually, he had access to weaponry and was driven to some things, but the hatred in his heart is the same kind of thing that happens to us, at least for a brief second, when somebody cuts us off or something. And I'm not saying you're going to carry out some murderous rampage because somebody cuts you off, but there is this. Do you know if you keep carrying that through though? Mm-hmm. Do you know those momentary like revenge moments? If you carry that your anger through and it doesn't subside, you have a pretty significant capacity for wickedness.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, that's interesting. I mean, you bring up it seemed like a normal guy. And I don't know if you've read in your studies of history, there was a book written by, her name was Hannah Arendt, and she in World War II was a Jew, and I think she went to a concentration camp, or she fled and escaped. But in the 15 or so years after, she made it back to New York City, and she's a writer, and she had written about the Holocaust, and I believe in various other volumes. Around this time, they found a guy in Argentina. Do you remember what his name was? Adolf Eichmann.
Yep.
Who was the guy he completely organized the Holocaust. And so everyone, they were having this massive, they brought him back to Israel, and they were going to have this massive trial. The whole world was covering it in news coverage and everything, and she attended. And the thing that they were most surprised about is they were expecting to walk out and see this monster of a guy, who just looked evil. This is the guy who was scheduling the trains for when the people would come in and get gassed. This is the guy who was fully committed to all this and seeking to make it more efficient, to kill people and to murder millions. And the guy walks into the hearing, and it's this old man, very small and slender, wearing a suit and glasses, and they just look like a normal grandpa.
Yeah.
And they call it's the banality of evil.
Banality, yeah.
Banality of evil.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's right. And I mean, you hear this all the time when something like this happens. When there's some shooter somewhere, they always interview the guys on the street, on their where they live or whatever. He's such a nice neighbor.
Normal guy. Yep.
He had a dog and he walked his dog, and we just never saw this. We never saw this coming. And that's because people have. We are both made in the image of God, and yet we are bent in on ourselves, and we're wicked. And if we let our passions run free, they will lead us into some very, very dark places. And I'm not suggesting that everybody's going to end up becoming a psychopath. I'm just saying that our lusts will lead us into wicked acts that take all sorts of shapes. Mm-hmm. And to me that's the saddest part about this. Whenever I see something like this happen, I mean, just you pray, "Come, Lord Jesus," right? Because that's what you want to see God's kingdom come finally, and His will be done. And we also want to pray for the people who are obviously who are there, and who've lost loved ones, and who are in the throes. And so the theology about it aside, the practical, real issues of, people who are going to be traumatized for years because they went to a concert to listen to some country western music and you had bullets rain down on them.
And ultimately, you try to find reasons. You try to say, why did this happen? Why? Ultimately, this is just the season where you sit with the people who are suffering and you suffer with them. And like you said, you pray, like, come King Jesus, make this right. Make all things new again. So
the whole world sits in that place of solemnness and sadness, and you feel from secular and from religious all across this need and yearning for justice, and this righteous justice, this, the person will get what they want. And I guess even if it doesn't happen in this life, that's the great Christian hope, isn't it? That God, revenge will be mine, says the Lord. And he will do what is right.
And the fact that vengeance is his gives us a sense of peace and closure to this, because this is what's so interesting. I mean, the other piece about this, if you don't mind me talking about the what's happening in our culture and how I think that this is an evidence of kind of the rottenness in our culture now, is that what's happened in the Enlightenment, which is, in the history of the world, the Western world anyway, the Enlightenment is what happened kind of, about the 14th or 15th century or so till now. And it was the belief that we don't really need God for life, and that we've kind of outgrown the church's teaching and the belief that there is a God in heaven and a devil in hell, and that they're, good and evil forces, all this kind of thing. And so we've become highly secularized. So here's a guy who goes and he does this act, and then in order to avoid punishment, he kills himself, right? Now, the secular worldview says that's exactly what he did.
He escaped it.
In fact, the secular worldview doesn't even have a category of evil to appeal to. They are using language like evil. But the idea that there is such a thing as evil depends upon the idea of good and someone who can define what good is, who transcends human beings and transcends all the laws and cultural nuances all around the world. Is there one who defines good and just and right? And so the answer is, if you have God, the answer is yes. If you don't have a God, then no. So if the secular worldview comes to this situation, what they should be saying is, this is not evil nor good, the raining down of bullets. It just is.
Yeah.
The man, when they tried to come and capture him, shot himself, thereby eliminating any sense of justice for anyone.
Yeah.
Man, that is so hollow and so sad. Whereas the Christian worldview is going to say, no, first of all, this is an act of pure evil. It happened because this man is given over to the lust of his heart. And we are all capable of this, that had he repented and believed prior to his death, he would have eternal life. But if he did not, then he will stand under God's judgment. And there is no getting out from under that, right? God is not mocked. What you reap, you will sow. And so here's a man who did this thing, killed himself, thinking, of course, because he lives in a godless world that's told him that this is the way that I can get away with this. The moment that bullet went through his own brain, or however it is that he killed himself, he was standing before his maker.
Yeah, who was going
to hold him to account for what he's done. I got to tell you, that view has way more explanatory power. It has way more therapeutic power. It has way more everything power than the secular worldview. And I honestly, it makes me angry, though, that ideas have such great consequence. And what this guy has done and the way he's acted is really the result, honestly, of the secularization of the world. Is that this man now feels like killing himself, doing this has no moral ramification on him, and ultimately killing himself gets him out from any kind of judgment.
Yeah. But wouldn't the religious, the secular push back and say, well, people of religious affiliations do this as well?
Oh, there's no question that people of religious affiliations do this. That's kind of my argument, that secularism is a religion, and secularism has justified this sort of act in his parts. This is what's so interesting about what's gone on before, is that, if you get somebody who's a Muslim who does this, and you can hear this in some people who are Muslims who gets really angry. Here's a man who shows no evidence of any kind of, his brother was interviewed, and they said he doesn't have any kind of religious background. He doesn't have any any commitments of any kind of political views or anything. Like he's just a guy who decided to do this. And so here you have the secular world trying to look for all the typical old patsies, religion, right? Conservative politics, whatever. And they can find none of it. He doesn't have any of that. Mm-hmm. So what are you left with?
You sad old guy.
Right.
Yeah.
And my point is that what you're left with is a secularist.
Yeah.
You're left with a man who is basically a secularist, who believed that at his death he was just going to rot in the ground, who believed all the ideas that the world gave him, and he shot and killed everyone because, quite honestly, he probably was following that worldview to its natural conclusion, that there aren't any moral codes, there aren't any moral ramifications. So,
which is fascinating because most claimed secularists won't follow through. They will always cheat and pull morality out of it and appeal to a higher power, whether or not they'll admit it.
Yeah.
Right, and they'll claim that their viewpoint is not a religion, and it is, of course. It's a controlling way of viewing the world, and its beginning and its end, the destination. It has answers for what salvation is, has a whole set of rules. My goodness, and it's led in this case to some great wickedness, which again is just for me to make the point before that people, for whatever, there's something going on inside of us, right? That pushes us toward evil and wickedness and self-serving, and we kill people at a gay nightclub, and we rain bullets down on them from on high, and we do despicable things. Go into a mall in Toronto and start shooting people at a movie theater. Like it's a sickness of the human condition.
Yeah,
and it's all. I think what adds to it too is because, and we were kind of talking about this earlier, where with Twitter and Facebook and the news that comes out so quickly, like we've never been more interconnected. And so, whereas 100 years ago, you might hear about this thing in Vegas like a day later, but it's so far away from you that you don't feel that connected.
And when you hear about it, you have actually the editors have had a go about what's verified, right? Because they've gone through the process of learning from the police what it is that they need to learn.
Yeah, when it was a news story.
Whereas now you're actually seeing in real time the development of a news story.
Yeah.
And that's why you have the problems with fake news and stuff. So easy to produce that through Twitter, through Instagram, through whatever. You can just immediately report something even if it's not true. I was just telling you guys a minute ago, there's a guy who he's a soccer player, and he tore his anterior cruciate ligament. And on Twitter, while he's sitting there on the table being examined, on Twitter, some reporter is talking about his knee condition and what's gone on with his knee. It's this, that, the other thing. So this guy, he actually tweets back. His name's Benjamin Mendy. He tweets back in the moment saying, "How is it that you, a reporter, know more than a trained doctor who's currently looking at my knee?"
Yeah.
I don't even know what's going on with it. He doesn't even know what's going on with his knee. But so here you have this reporter who wants so fast, so it's to be the first one to report this, right? And all of it, and of course it's being done at least online for everybody it's clickbait, right?
Yeah.
Everybody, that's how you make your money online, is that you can sell advertising if you get more people clicking on your story. And so people are scouring and the internet and Facebook and for videos that people have posted.
Yeah.
There was one guy who live streamed it when the bullet started flying,
Right.
which is crazy. That now you're seeing this happen live.
Yeah.
So you're a reporter
Yeah.
on the spot. I tell you what, I wouldn't be thinking about live streaming it. I'd be out of there.
For real.
Yeah. Although, how do you? That was a challenge that they didn't. Where are you going to go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
We can
horrible.
pray for those folks, as I'm sure so many people who are listening have been praying for them. That's how you hear this. I'm sure that you have been praying. So even now, if you can lift a prayer up for the families of those who've been killed and those who are suffering from wounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's lots.
Well, it was interesting. I was reading yesterday about people will say, well, where is God in this? Where is God? So it's one of the questions, how could a loving God do this? But particularly, where is he? And then you have the classic line where you just see in Jesus' life how he's always rejected. He comes, heals people, and they kick him out. Get out of here. he comes and does this. Get out of here. Heals the blind. Get out of here. And anytime there is good, they push back against them. So, they ask, where is God? Well, you kicked him out. You didn't want anything to do with him.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you want him?
Yeah, but that is what people want. They would actually they want God to leave them alone when they want to make the decisions they want to make about stuff. And then they want God to show up when things get difficult or hard. Honestly, I've said this before in some sermons. I think that in the modern world, most people want to treat God like he's a puppy, right? That when, if he becomes a nuisance in any way, you just kick him out the door so he can go. But when you come home and you're sad, you want him to sit on your lap and lick you and accept you at every turn and make sure that he's always waiting there, excited to see you when you show up. But he does not interfere with your decision making. You're the boss. You're the one who gets to determine whether he gets to go in his kennel or not. He's sort of just around for you. And that's the sad statement, is that's the way most people act. And of course, then they want to have somebody to blame in these moments that's not themselves. And it's not the human condition. That's not sin in the world. It's not any of that.
So they go blame their puppy.
Right. So they blame the dog.
Yeah.
Right. Which is
but not even blaming. Like I've noticed too, is people will just jump on to something that's happening to prove some sort of political agenda that they have, or whatever. So like they will take advantage instead of being like addressing the situation and loving these people. It's no, this is the reason it happened, because of this political thing, or no, it's because of this thing. And that's sad as well, because do you even really care, or is it just this is another thing that can prove my point?
Well, was it G.K. Chesterton who said when he was asked in an article, I believe he was asked, G.K. Chesterton is a theologian.
He's a Roman Catholic guy,
British
guy,
yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he was asked in an article what's wrong with the world, or something to that effect.
He was actually asked to write an article. Others had been asked as well, what's wrong with the world?
Yeah, and his response was, I am, or something to that effect.
Signed G.K. Chesterton. Yeah. So it wasn't much of an article, but it was straight to the point.
Yeah. And that's just, it's the taking, exactly what we're talking about. It's the accepting the reality that we all have sinned. And we all contributed to what is wrong in the world.
So to bring this back to Romans, this is what the argument in Romans 5 is. It's that you're born in Adam.
Right.
And that being born in Adam means that you're guilty from birth, but you also have a proclivity toward wickedness that always blooms into a flower for every last person. There's nobody who has been born in Adam who doesn't actually end up sinning.
Right.
We all sin.
Yep.
And we sin because we're sinners. We're born in iniquity in that sense. And so situations like this, of course, show that. And the sense you don't need situations like this to show it, but it's certainly when it happens, we should be going back to reaffirm our Christian commitments and say, yes, well, there's a lot of explanatory power in the way that the Bible describes the world and human beings and what our problem is and how we can be delivered from it.
Yeah.
But I have a question before we finish.
Oh.
That's totally segued into this.
Cool.
So when you come to faith in Christ, so in Romans chapter 6, so I just mentioned Romans 5. In Romans chapter 6, what Paul's dealing with is the question ultimately, are Christians free from sin? And the answer is Romans 6, 1-14. Yes, we are free from sin. That's the language that he used. And from sin, in the language of sin there, sin is seen as a kind of a governing power in Romans 6. So you're free from sin's governing power. And I've been in sermons just keep using the image of like a transfer from one nation to another, one governance to another. And so whether or not you want to convey that as being from one master to another, or from the U.S. to Canada, whatever, I use the language law land to Graceland, whatever. But there has been this transfer. So here's my question. In Graceland, in the world where we are children of God and have been freed from the power of sin, how much victory over sin, real victory over sin, and by sin I mean like besetting sins like lust and besetting sins like gossip and anger, like how much victory over that can we experience, and what should we expect to experience in the present life prior to either Christ returning or our death? Go.
I think part of it would be, I would think that that's what working out your salvation is. And so if you're putting things in practice.
So that's a phrase from Philippians 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
working out your salvation.
This is how I think I would work it out. If, for example, you this person A has a real proclivity towards lust and watching pornography, they are not going to have victory in that sin unless they are taking active choices to now limit my internet time, to put up blockers, to put up stuff like.
So
are
can you do that
making
perfectly?
I don't know if you can ever do it perfectly.
Okay, so that's my question.
So you're asking if we can have complete victory.
I'm asking you, what if you're pastoral intern Daniel and Pastor Jonathan, do you like, if you're going to counsel somebody, what are you going to tell them about the kind of how much victory they can have over sin in their life? Just as an illustration, really quickly, I'll give you one. A good friend of mine, he actually used to argue that he hasn't sinned in he's used to say, I haven't sinned in a week.
Yeah.
And I used to always respond to him, said, until now, right?
Yeah.
Right. He just lied. So, but okay, I haven't sinned in a week. But he would say that I could be sin-free for a period of time. If you want to go into history, the Wesleyan, there's a Wesleyan teaching that talks about it's called teaching about perfection. And they didn't mean that you could be completely perfect, but you could be free from you could be free from sin in any known way, right? So you might be guilty of something that's unknown, but in any known way.
Man, I don't know. This is how I think about it. Like, because we're now in Christ, but don't we still have ripples and things that seep in? And because we're still in such a fallen world, it's the mist that always surrounds us. So, and we breathe it in sometimes. It's always on our skin, and so we always kind of have sin on us. But we have to remember that we're in Christ and we're righteous. I don't know what I said there.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I mean,
I think your illustration answers it. I don't know if we ever is a moment where we can be completely sinless. Like, isn't that what Mormons believe? That when you ask for forgiveness, you can be completely forgiven, but as soon as you sin again, all of your transgressions are added back on?
Yeah.
Yeah, and see, this is where I always refer back to what Jesus taught. Like, we should see, I don't know, we should see fruit of a person's life. That doesn't mean it's perfect. When you are pruning a tree, a dead tree, it's dead to its sin. When you prune it, you should see fruit that next year. That doesn't mean the whole tree is going to be perfect, that every single inch of the branch has fruit on it. But like, our hope is that you continue to the hope of, or the goal maybe, is that you continue to work that out. You continue to prune and
fight the fight.
Yeah.
So
there should be a level of, I don't know if the word trajectory is right, but there should be like a desire for that.
Knowing that the victory has come in Christ, and that you will be on the winning side of that because of Christ.
And it hasn't come in its fullness, which is, I think, a common thing that we expect of ourselves. That without going into too much detail, I had a friend who assumed that after baptism would lose his homosexual leanings, and when that didn't happen, he was extremely discouraged.
But you do see, though, if you end up telling people that you will be free from basically the power and even the presence of sin, its pull on you. If you tell them that, then that's the kind of thing they expect. And so one of the things, the reason I'm bringing this up is because one of the ways that one can misunderstand Paul, even in Romans 6, is they can read, okay, you're free from the power of sin, you've been transferred into, you're slave of righteousness, but then you also need to realize, okay, those are what we call indicatives of grace. And then he follows it with imperatives. So be this person, which assumes, of course, that you can also not be this. You can be the kind of person, to use the image that I used last weekend, who does walk by the Bugatti and drive the Sunfire. You can be somebody who does this. Yeah. Now, you're a fool for doing it. You can live in the old man, to use the language of the scriptures, right? You can live in the body of flesh, right? That's given over to sinful tendencies. You can do that. Yeah. But Paul's trying to say that you don't have to. And it's interesting how he uses his language, because he'll say, especially in Romans 5, we have been set free, or Romans 6 as well. We have been set free, right? So past tense, we have been set free. So that's already taken place for us. And we will be saved in Romans 5 from his wrath, right?
Yeah.
So there's a future orientation. But the question is, what about the present?
What about the
So you have
present?
the past of already been freed, the future of being ultimately freed. What about the present?
So how do we live now?
And this is why theologians have used this language of there's a tension in the already and the not yet.
Yeah.
The already being freed and the not yet total. And we live in that tension time where, we have died to sin, but sin hasn't died. Does that make sense? Right? That sin itself as a governing power still calls our name.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? The old master still yells. The flesh still screams and demands that we obey.
Mm-hmm.
What Paul's trying to argue is you don't have to do that. You've been freed now so that you don't have to. Will you do it perfectly?
Yeah.
Well, probably not until the return of Christ or your death.
Yeah.
Right. But that doesn't mean that you can't already have significant victory
Yeah.
over sin, significant obedience to Christ, that you can't actually see, as you said, this a growth in grace, so that I used to be somebody who was really committed to looking at pornography, and now I'm not.
Yeah.
Right? That I can actually say that can be the normal experience of a Christian.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that I'm perfect, and I used to really gossip and I don't. Used to get really angry, but now I don't.
Yeah.
And we can become discouraged too, because that's when we can fall back and forget about the grace, and it becomes the works. Like I haven't sinned in so long. I haven't been struggling with the sin for so long. And then, that outlash of anger, like a month later after doing really well, then we're like, oh, I haven't changed.
So
and
you
we
want
can square one.
We want to say that there are two things that are simultaneously true about Christians. Number one, that we are sinners saved by grace, right? Which is what you're just saying, that at every day, especially the longer you live, the more you realize how deep your depravity goes. But second, we're also saints who ought not sin.
Yeah.
So there's this, there's this tension which says that and the emphasis, quite honestly, on the New Testament is on that part, is on the saints who ought not sin part.
Yeah.
So you ought to be always repenting because you're a sinner saved by grace, and you'll realize at the end of every day, I don't, George Whitefield used to do that, at the end of every day, you just recount all the ways that he sinned against God that day as a means of kind of devotional, dependence on God. But you're always repenting, but you're also somebody who is seeing over time, maybe not immediately, growth in grace, fruit on the tree, right? You see the Spirit's fruit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, and self-control.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I really like the image of the old master calling. I think that one, for whatever reason, sunk well with me. And I think that Daniel mentioned this a little bit. It's a bit of practice and practice disobeying sin's command. When sin asks you to do something, getting used to and putting in the proper blockers and the proper, having a support team around you. Have a bunch of old former slaves to sin with you, if you know what I mean by that.
Who have had victory, can now mentor you.
And who are currently, journeying with you. I think it's easier to say no to your old master when you have a couple of buddies with you. So
yeah, and I think the beauty of Romans 6 is that it establishes at the very front edge of that, though, that you don't have to go to. It doesn't own you anymore, and so that
doesn't mean it's not going to be hard to say no.
No, absolutely, it's still screaming your name out, and every part of you, the old man, is still screaming, saying you should probably go and do that. You're going to have to go do that, and even Satan is whispering in your ears, I own you, but it's all just talk. It's all just talk. He doesn't own you. You don't have to go there.
And the great news is we have a master who went and attacked sin and won and never sinned. I thought I'll just close with this. The image of in the garden, Adam and Eve are there, and Satan is in this beautiful garden as the serpent, and he goes to Adam and Eve and brings sin upon them, right? Tempts them and destroys them. And so then we have the fall. And then you flash forward to the time of Jesus where he goes out into the desert. And it's just, you have this contrast of this beautiful garden where there's life and goodness, and now a desert where it's barren, and this idea that Jesus goes out in the wilderness for 40 days and goes to basically to have victory over Satan and not be tempted, and Satan tries to hit him there, and he can't do it. And
So-
that's like a massive. It's just an amazing picture
So
of this
they-
true Adam.
They failed in the midst of flourishing, and he
He succeeded
in the midst
nothing.
of nothing.
And what a good that is a good savior. And it's remarkable when you begin to look at that and contrast that. That was my thought from yesterday, and it was really cool. But gentlemen, this might be, we are closing on the 50-minute mark. This might be the longest podcast in
Maybe.
extra history.
No,
I doubt it.
You don't
done
think so?
longer. But you know what?
Have you really?
It's time
Oh,
to
yeah.
call it a day.
It is time to call it a day.
It's been good.
Thank you for listening. Jonathan, thank you for coming
Hey,
back
no
on.
problem, eh?
That was a good radio voice.
Thank you.
And this is a good radio program, Jeff. And we look forward to seeing you
It's the last
and
time
hearing
I get
from you
invited.
and talking at you
Talking at you.
next week on The Extra Podcast.